Tom Quee presents The Royle Ramble, an episode-by-episode celebration of the classic British sitcom The Family. To get in touch with the show, email us at theroyleramblepod@gmail.com. Hello everyone, welcome back to The Royle Ramble. This is your host Tom Quee here, back for another edition of our deep dive celebration of the Royle Family. And today we are tackling one of the best episodes in my eyes, although, they're all amazing, aren't they, in this initial run. This is the final episode of Series 2, Anthony's Birthday. And just before we get to that, just a quick bit of housekeeping. Haven't actually got any emails to read out today, so if you want to send in an email for next time, if you want to correspond with me, if you want to reflect on your own thoughts on the episode, or, sometimes I ask a few questions in the episode because there's some things I don't know, so maybe you can answer those for me. Get in touch with me, theroyleramblepod@gmail.com. If you want more news on the show and you want more silly gifs, etc., you can follow us on Twitter. That's Royle Ramble Pod. All the links down below in your episode description, by the way. We have a Patreon as well. So if you really, really enjoy the show and you want to give back to the show, you want to help keep the lights on, and indeed you want to get premium access to the show as well. So for example, today we're dropping the Anthony's Birthday episode, but I've also dropped today on the Patreon the first Christmas episode, the 99 episode, the one where Denise gives birth. So if you want to hear that straight away, you don't want to wait a whole month or 28 days in this case for February, then you can go onto Patreon and support us there. I also put the quiz episodes on there a few weeks before as well, and we recorded more good ones of those recently, so definitely keep an eye out. And indeed, if you want to come on the show and you want to test your mettle, we're now getting into Series 3 in terms of trivia. We've done 6 episodes, 3 on Series 1, 3 on Series 2. So that's the royleramblepod@gmail.com. We're on iTunes. Please leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and just spread the word. Just let your Royle family friends know, if they weren't already aware, that there is a podcast out here doing the deep diving. And yeah, go back through the archive if you're new to the show, catch up on all the criticism, and let's get into it. And so we open in classic Royle family mode with a shot of the telly. On screen is Mike Reid as the top-tier EastEnders legend that is Frank Butcher. Someone who I remember well from my time watching the programme as a kid, of which this would have been the kind of era, the late 90s era of the soap. And Frank seems to in many ways actually greet the viewers, saying hey both to Peggy, aka Babs Windsor at the bar, and us as viewers at the start of the episode. And Jesus, Frank Butcher and Peggy Mitchell, what a power couple. They're in the same hallowed halls to me as Tony and Carmela, hell, even Jim and Barb. And we'll get to Mike Reid in a moment, but it's worth taking in here how different the surroundings look. It's Anthony's birthday, of course, his 18th no less, so we can see cards atop the television, nibbles in bowls beside the eternally filled dish of the ashtray in the middle of the table. There's also other ornaments that we haven't seen before. There's a giraffe of all things, oddly, on the edge of the fireplace. I wonder where that's from. The fireplace which is seemingly on as well. Good Lord, Jim, think of the bars. And we can see the heat rising under the fake coals. Clearly then, this is a special occasion. I mean, it's not just that their youngest is 18, but it's the introduction too of his girlfriend, Emma, to the Royle Ramble. The Frank and Peggy scene continues on the telly for a moment. He pops something down on the counter, money, a key maybe, and asks if there's anything else. She shakes her head, and then Jim speaks over the top of the programme, and we realise that we are in fact seeing Jim's point of view as he's looking at the box. And Jim, of course, as always, isn't happy for people in higher stations of life than he is himself.
Well, look,
Mike Reid, he must pinch himself every bloody morning then. I bet you can't believe his own bloody luck.
Mike having been a dirty comic for many years before becoming one of the country's most iconic characters. I mean, I'd argue that even those who didn't give a jot about EastEnders at the time, or soaps in general, knew who Frank Butcher is. I mean, what a voice. And, Mike Reid's a great actor as well. And as he says this, we cut to Jim lying back deep into his seat as Barbara toils beside him. And as he decries Mike Reid's trajectory, we cut to Jim lying back deep into his seat as Barbara toils beside him. And consider Barb and Jim, consider Ricky and Sue. Both of them were in EastEnders' direct competitor Brookside for many, many years. And between the two of them, we can see an old school can of Carling. I mean, man, that defined cylindrical design. Again, something I can kind of distantly remember. Like, cans just don't look like that anymore. And there's also a bowl of nibbles on Jim's side, which looks mostly finished with. He's obviously dug in before anyone else has arrived. So it's Jim sitting there and Barb doing all the work. All the changed man stuff that Jim preached in the last episode clearly has amounted to nothing then. Jim then quotes from Mike Reid's act a bit as Barb urged him to switch it off as people will be arriving soon. And Mike Reed, let's just talk about Mike Reed for a second. Michael Reed was an English comedian, actor, author, and occasional TV presenter who played the role of Frank Butcher in the soap opera EastEnders and hosted the children's game Runaround. He was known for his gravelly voice and strong London accent. In 1987, he joined the cast of EastEnders as Frank Butcher, for which he gained much popularity over the years. He initially joined the series as a semi-regular character, first appearing in September of that year, but was so popular that during 1988 he became a full-time cast member as his character became landlord of the Queen Vic pub, buying it from Den Watts, Leslie Grantham, or, anyone from my era might remember Leslie from Fort Boyard, during 1988. The character was involved in many popular storylines over the years, the most famous of these being his long turbulent relationship with Pat Wicks, played by Pat St. Clement, and later his short-lived marriage to Peggy Mitchell. And Reed was in many films as well too, in 2000 appearing in the excellent Snatch, playing crooked diamond trader Doug the Head Denovitz. There's then a fun camera angle that switches from at Jim's side to at his front, as he looks off past us and Barb retreats to the back of the room to make further preparations. Here we can see more cards and a stocked buffet table, but what caught my eye the most, however, was the gigantic 18 card, which is from the brand Bang on the Door. And if you were around in the late 90s, early 2000s in the UK, you'll recall that Bang on the Door was absolutely everywhere, and seemingly it's now totally gone. So what was Bang on the Door? Well, Bang on the Door started in 1988. It was founded by two designers, Karen Duncan and Samantha Stringle, in a cold flat above a butcher's shop in North London. This is all from their website, by the way. There's got a great sort of history bio on Bang on the Door on the website, so definitely check that out. But basically, they were kind of, how do you describe it? It's like strong, simple, humorous images of animals with black outlines, and they have a girl, groovy chick, which is kind of their icon, a kind of tween queen and that sort of thing. Bang on the Door were associated with comic relief, and they were just merchandise everywhere. They were seemingly just, I just remember loads of pencil cases from my youth, and posters, and stationery, and all that sort of stuff. And it's great that the brand is immortalised here as part of Anthony's 18th birthday. Jim's eyes, though, are squarely on the box. He doesn't even turn to Barbara as she talks to him and walks around. She then goes over to the drinks cabinet and asks if they've got enough lagers. Jim doesn't even seem to be listening, rather running his tongue along his gums, hunting for any excess snackage that may be stored behind a molar. Get more lagers with what? Jim asks, as if he's dipping into his pocket for any of them anyway. And it's his son's bloody birthday, his 18th no less. You think he wouldn't mind too much, but alas. I mean, Denise does say earlier in the first series that he's Mr. Generous Head when he's out, but perhaps he's still stinging from the wedding, or simply he doesn't care. It's a little hard to make out the contents of the cabinet and the buffet, but we can see lots of cans, lots of bottles of pop and the like. Barbara then bends over, stoops her spine low to grab something, and the doorbell rings, and of course Jim urges her to answer it. Again, remember him in just the last episode talking about the delicate gravy caressing the sausage and mash? I mean, yeah, we ain't getting that, Jim. Barbara leaves to answer, and Jim tends to his ear hole, digging a finger deep and really jabbing it further than a bloody COVID swab, heading in with proper perforating force. He then examines his unearthed treasure of a cursed orb and, of course, wipes it on his top as Twiggy enters. Yes, Twiggy, aka Jeffrey Hughes, always a delight when this legend visits the household for an episode, of course, and this episode is a treat, really, for secondary characters, as everyone we've met so far in the show, along with two newcomers, make appearances. We get a better view here as Twiggy enters, too, of the entrance hallway. There's a mirror on your left as you come in, and small portraits of flowers going up the staircase. It's quite tasteful, really, considering the giraffe and such in the lounge, and yeah, I really don't like that giraffe. So Twiggy comes in, greets them both. Barbara asks after the sovereign ring. Twiggy, of course, has never let her down. He passes it across to Jim, who gives it a glance to inspect, but obviously, again, isn't really bothered. And down on the sofa, too, as Twiggy's in the room, we can see birthday decorations and uninflated balloons. So, the sovereign ring. Well, a sovereign ring is a ring which typically has a gold sovereign as a primary decorative feature, with the obverse face as the visible detail. The coin may be either genuine or replica tender, and may be either a sovereign or half sovereign. In the UK, it is also common to use custom coinage bearing such motifs as the Three Lions or other similar imagery such as St. George or a Welsh dragon. Sovereign rings, of course, are associated with chav culture in the UK, or more broadly kind of emulating the look of a mafioso. Like, I'm pretty sure Tony rocks quite a few in The Sopranos. And celebrities who have been observed wearing a sovereign ring include Brad Pitt, the English rapper Louise Amanda Harmon, aka Lady Sovereign, and, interestingly enough, clearly one of the most evil women in the world, or the spiciest woman, Ghislaine Maxwell. Yeah, she apparently rocks a sovereign ring as well. So Twiggy lights a ciggy, inhales, and Jim asks how much they owe him, to which he says 20 notes. Then Jim asks how much he paid for it. And I mean, even if he got it for free, Twiggy, 20 notes isn't a terrible markup. He's got to get a little bit of profit out of it. I guess to me at least he does. And we have seen Jim ripping Twiggy off by taking those jeans in the first episode. So, the two of them really are thick as thieves in a way. Ciggy in hand, Twiggy then approaches the buffet. He calls it a buffet, like Little Miss Muffet on a tuffet. And I guess that's a regional thing. Don't start it now, Barb pleads as he grabs a few things, an onion twist perhaps by the looks of it. And Twiggy then slops down on the sofa near Jim and watches some Mike Reid. And Barb behind them is at the buffet, or the buffet, cutting up some wrapping paper. And here we can see sausage rolls, cocktail sausages, sandwiches, plates and napkins, as well as that weird cheese foil thing that people do with the cocktail stick. What's that about? She says that Twiggy should have brought his girlfriend, but he's not seeing her now.
Oh, you're not?
Well, she was a bit of a bike, really.
Well, I thought that's why you liked it.
Yeah, but you don't want everyone else having a go on it, you know what I mean?
Great moment, this. And I love the cut to Jim with a hula hoop in his mouth childishly as he nods and then crunches. And poor Twig, he really did a lot for this one, it seems. Bought her a gold ankle chain. I mean, she probably would have liked the sovereign too. Grouted the bathroom, put up some shelves, but she was knocking off Duckers as well. I love that we get another Duckers reference. And Barbara is proper shocked at this and asks how Twiggy became aware.
What? Oh, I'm sorry. How did you find out?
Duckers told me.
Did he?
Well, he is me mate, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that is classic Royle family joke right in there. So brilliant. Proper dash of the absurd, It reminds me a bit of when they're speaking about having a knees up on the night of the baby's birth. And Jim asks Joe if he's coming. He asks when. He says all night, and then Joe says no. I mean, because really, Duckers and Twiggy shouldn't be friends ever again at this point. But that is almost beside the point, isn't it? It's their friendship means more to them than a deep personal betrayal. And man, I wonder what Duckers and Twiggy are like together at the Feathers. Right pair of roustabouts, no doubt. He didn't want to get lumbered with all the kids, Twiggy says, which is fair. The camera then pans out and we're viewing the lounge from behind Barbara, who is of course still getting everything ready.
I didn't like to say anything at the time, Twiggy, but I did think she was a bit common. You can do a lot better than that.
Yeah. Mind you, so can Duckers.
Yeah.
There's lots of jokes here, at least to me, that feel very tongue-in-cheek, very self-aware. The sovereign ring really being held up as some incredible gift. The fact that Barbara saw this woman as a bit common when she herself and the roles that she does would be viewed as common by others. Again, I'm not judging or anything, of course. I just, it's something I see in the piece. Let me know what you think about the sort of class commentary in this moment. The RoyleRamblePod@gmail.com, and of course, anything else you have on this episode or any other episodes. Twiggy, though, never lets his mates go by the wayside, saying Duckers could do better too, which is nice, which is charming, which is Twiggy, isn't it? So Barbara is wrapping the present, and of course, always in parent mode, asks after little Lee, who we heard about way back in the pilot. We hear that Twiggy's ex won't let him see him just because he got bladdered last time he got access. I mean, that's pretty depressing when you consider it, especially from little Lee's perspective and Twiggy's ex. But still fun, really, in the context of the show, And Twiggy's exasperation that he could have his access revoked just because he was as pissed as a newt, is kind of wild. And, this is quite prescient also, the next bit, with Twiggy seeming to anticipate the complete domination of tech on the youth, which is going on in 2021.
You know what she's like?
Yeah.
Only time I speak to him now is on his mobile.
That's a line that probably would have had more impact in 1999 when this originally came out, as nowadays every kid has a blooming mobile and a Switch and an iPad and what else, And I love here that when they're watching EastEnders, the writers show some synchronicity between Jim and Twiggy, as, of course, they're pretty much the same age, they've got the same reference points and all that sort of thing. So when Twiggy sees Mike Reid on the screen, he says pretty much exactly the same thing as Jim said earlier. He's one lucky bleeder, him, landing that job. So Barbara pops the Prezi down and then reluctantly asks Jim if he's going to get changed for the party. I mean, we have seen Jim dressed to the nines for the wedding, so he can make the effort. But of course, he shuts this down, saying it isn't a party, she's just made a few butties, and all of that was only because she wants to look at Emma. I mean, Christ, Jim, just be kind for once. But still, I like how Craig, Caroline and Carmel, the writers, they're doubling down here on his recalcitrance. He wasn't ever going to change, despite what he said in the last episode, and fool you and fool anyone else for ever believing what he trumpeted there. Regardless, Barb wants him to blow up the balloons for the party. Jim says that Anthony's 18, not 8, but Twiggy just says no danger, gets on with it, and no danger, great northern phrase, which we have heard him say before. He said it at the Sunday afternoon episode when he was talking about getting rid of Dave's old fizzy, no danger. I mean, it could be from elsewhere, maybe not the north, but I've heard other northerners at uni say that, and, you know, Twiggy, he just gets stuck in with the graft. Rather than just absolutely watching EastEnders as Jim is, you know, Twiggy will put up shelves, Twiggy will grout, Twiggy will get a sovereign ring for you, you know. He does kind of have a heart of gold, as Nana references in his last appearance. Jim then mentions his father here, which is always intriguing. You know, I love these little glimpses of their prehistory, stating that he took Jim out for a bevy, and that was it. And considering Jim and Barb got together a little after the Kennedy assassination, which was mentioned a few episodes back, that probably means that Jim had his pint with his dad in the late 60s. I mean, it's hard to estimate for sure, but, you know, fun to consider. And you'll remember as well that when Jim mentioned his father, he said how horrible he was to his man, but, you know, at least he dug his son for a pint. So Barbara opens a can and puts it next to Jim, saying that they had balloons for Denise, so they have to have them for Anthony. And Denise has been established as being 26 when the show begins, so that would have been 1991 when she was 18, and Anthony would have been 10 then. I mean, 1991, just before I was born, what a year, you know, the year the Gulf War broke out, and one of the greatest ever in my eyes, Freddie Mercury, sadly passed away. Jim then breaks, says balloon my arse, because of course he does, claims that you never get a minute to yourself in this house, and the boys begin blowing. And Jim makes Twiggy laugh when he claims that he could do with a pair of bellows under his arse. They're not going to work for long, though, of course, with Twiggy putting more elbow grease in than Jim, unsurprisingly. Twig pops a blown one up on his torso as a boob and asks Jim who it reminds him of. And, of course, he says Beverly Macker. God, the ghost of Beverly hangs over the whole show. I mean, she's not dead, but you get what I'm saying. And I believe the whole entire series ends, as in the final special, the last episode, Barbara's Old Ring. I believe, like, Beverly Macker's one of the final things ever said in the show, you know, which is great. Jim then puts a longer one on his crotch, asking, "Oh nurse, what time's my operation?" Which feels in that kind of Babs Windsor carry-on lineage. You know, the boys don't really stop with this. It's great to hear Jim's throaty laugh as Twiggy then parades an inflated cock and balls combo, pewing all over the room. And Jim loves it. Jim wants to keep it, you know, to piss off Norma as she is set to descend on the party soon, what with it not being Halloween tonight and all that. And Twig, making conversation as they work, asks about Anthony bringing his Mrs. Emma. But Jim, of course, is quick to dismiss it straight away.
So your Anthony's bringing his beard, eh?
No, it'll only last 5 minutes. She'll soon suss out the lazy half son.
You know, Jim saying that, being the lazy arse sod who struggles to blow up a singular balloon. Twiggy then interestingly harks back to Denise's 18th and how it went off big style. I mean, of course Twig was there, he's part of the furniture, but it's just funny to think that that would have went down in this same room, you know, and I imagine the room looked exactly the same. The bell then goes, and Jim passes an untied balloon to Twiggy and calls for Barb to get the door. And, you know, of course Jim, I mean, this reveals his lack of work ethic. He lets the balloon go at the spout as he passes it across. And balloons! Let's quickly talk about the history of balloons. Man has intentionally filled bladders, especially actual animal bladders, with air since prehistory. In ancient Greece, these had a number of recorded uses. The Aztecs inflated cat intestines to make shapes to present as sacrifices to the gods. By the 18th century, people were inflating balloons of cloth or canvas with hot air and sending it aloft. The Montgolfier brothers going so far as to experiment with first animals in 1782, and then, when the altitude did not kill them, human beings in 1783. The first hydrogen-filled gas balloon was flown in the 1790s, and a century later the first hydrogen-filled weather balloons were launched in France. The first modern rubber balloons on record were made by Michael Faraday in 1824. He used these to contain gases he was experimenting with, especially hydrogen. By 1825, similar balloons were being sold by Thomas Hancock, but like Faraday's, they came disassembled as two circles of soft rubber. The user was expected to lay the circles on top of the other and rub their edges until the soft gummy rubber stuck, leaving the powdered inner part loose for inflation. And modern pre-assembled balloons were being sold in the US by the early 20th century. And after Twiggy's arrival comes a new character, Darren. Can you believe it takes all the way up until the end of the second series for Darren to appear? You know, I genuinely thought he was around before that. And Andrew Wyman, the actor, aka the King of the Jungle, does such a terrific job with this character, especially from the off. The body language and the physical acting incredible. His somewhat awkward, downward-looking demeanour, the Umbro jumper with the head jacket is perfect too as costume. He kind of dawdles in after Barbara. Barb introduces him. He glances from the men to Barb, is greeted by Twiggy initially, not Jim. He accepts the offer of a lager and plonks down into Ant's chair, body caved forward to avoid as much awkwardness as he can. I mean, he could have offered to help with the balloons maybe, but, you know, he's a young boy himself and he's not got too much about him, has he, old Darren? And who is Andrew Wyman? Well, Andy Wyman is an English actor known for portraying the role of Darren Sinclair Jones. Again, he's got a double-barreled surname, so interesting that. Not really explored that. In The Royle Family, and Kirk Sutherland on Coronation Street. In 2006, Wyman appeared as a contestant in the ITV reality singing competition Soap Star Superstar. And in July 2010, he was seen in an audition for the X Factor in Manchester. He was auditioning under his Coronation Street character and sang the Kings of Leon song Sex on Fire. He also took part in the 2012 series of Dancing on Ice, and in 2019, he participated in I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here and finished in second place. I mean, he's had a fantastic career, Andrew Wyman. I mean, at the time of being in the Royle Family, I think he was literally 18, like he was, portraying the age that he was. But he went on to Coronation Street, and I remember being a kid and seeing it, I'd be like, oh my God, it's Darren. And, he's been on there for like 2 decades now, so good on him. And I was doing a bit of research, actually, about Andrew Wyman, and I found an interesting article from the Bolton News, 2nd of November 2000, stated, "Nothing dodgy about me," says Royal Star. But Andrew, this is from the article quote, but Andrew, who has been acting since he was 11, said his school pals in Swindon were less than complimentary about his single-minded route to stardom. He was close to moving schools on numerous occasions because the hassle proved to be too much, but ultimately he decided to stay to show he would not be beaten. The actor said, "My dad told me it was because they were jealous, and that helped me understand. They were hanging around on street corners, and I was doing something with my life, and at the end of the day, I've done quite well out of it. I'm being noticed a lot more now, but I hope people don't think I'm like Darren in real life. I don't go pinching stuff for a start." So Darren's there, and if I was there, I'd probably try and arrive at the party with my mate. I probably wouldn't want to be there with my mate's dad and his friend, but I'd at least maybe try and chat to the men. But, Darren, he's a little shy, he's a little withdrawn, isn't he? He's just played perfectly. We've all known Darrens, or indeed we've all been Darrens, And behind Darren, as he sits down, we can see a glut of birthday cards, all as chintzy and tacky as the rest.
When's your court case?
A week on Thursday.
You'll be all right, won't you? First offence?
No.
What do you think of your chances?
Dunno, really.
You got a good solicitor?
No.
Great storytelling. Darren gets introduced, and the next thing asked is, when's the court case? Which just offers up so many different questions. They go on at Anthony for being a lazy arse, but him having a friend like Darren probably isn't wise either. At least Anthony isn't Darren. Indeed, we'll see Anthony grow into a man as the show goes on and become very much an anti-Darren. And it's not looking good for Darren. He doesn't know his chances, he doesn't have a good solicitor, so his dominant characteristic is clueless. But we see him later on in the show, so I guess he couldn't have gone down, or at least not for long. And it's interesting, as all this is being said, that Twiggy's just quietly working away at the inflatables. You'd figure he'd have more insight on the inside, on the judicial system, but maybe it's wise for him to be quiet on that front altogether. The bell goes again as the boys continue to blow, and it's 3 of our all-time faves together. Nana, Dave and Denise. Nana rocking a handbag, of course, and a nice purple blouse adorned with flowers. Denise, who does look lovely, as Barb says, her hair up in a style we haven't really seen before. More stylish, with flowers in it, and Dave is rocking a purple shirt. All 3 of them actually seem quite colour-coordinated, having a dash of purple on their clothing. Jim, who is smoking a balloon cigar as they all enter, greets Norma and says how lovely it is to see her. After he recently farted on her in her sleep and stormed out after she was asking about that thing on the telly with the man as a chicken. The rest follow in. Denise mushes Darren's hair, which he quickly repositions into the combed-down, gel-heavy mess that it was. I love that too. It shows they have a history, a familiarity. They've probably known Darren since Ant was at school. Maybe Darren was at Denise's 18th. It's, not really established, but you can imagine that. Then, all seated down, Nana realises there's someone new in their midst.
Which one are you? This is Darren, ma'am.
Nana probably eyes him suspiciously there, not probably aware of his scofflaw nature, more that there's someone new, I guess. She doesn't look best pleased, though, at least. Barbara asks for drinks. Norma says no, saying she'd better not. Jim shoots her a confused glance, and she then quickly says she'll have a sherry, which returns things back to an equilibrium. And behind Jim, as he's chewing the balloon plastic, we can see Twiggy getting back to work and popping the cock and balls front and centre, almost like a family insignia above the window. Barbara seems to glance at it and just continues on, pouring the sherry for her mother amidst all the cans of Carling. Denise asks why there isn't any music, apparently it's broke, but fear not, Jim says he can get the banjo out. Barb says she doesn't want Emma thinking they're the Beverly Hillbillies, but Dave sees it more of a deliverance thing. And The Beverly Hillbillies, well, that's an American TV sitcom that was broadcast on CBS from 1962 to 1971. It had an ensemble cast featuring Buddy Ebsen, Irene Ryan, Donna Douglas, and Max Baer Jr. as the Clampetts, a poor backwoods family from the hills of the Ozarks who moved to posh Beverly Hills, California after striking oil on their land. The Beverly Hillbillies ranked among the top 20 most watched programs on television for 8 out of its 9 seasons, ranking as the #1 series of the year during its first 2 seasons, with 16 episodes that remain among the 100 most watched television episodes in American history. It accumulated 7 Emmy nominations during its run. It remains in syndicated reruns, and its ongoing popularity spawned a 1993 film adaptation by 20th Century Fox. And Deliverance, I mean, God, what a classic. Deliverance is a 1972 American survival thriller film distributed by Warner Brothers and produced and directed by John Boorman, starring Jon Voight, Burt Reynolds, Ronnie Cox, and one of my favourite actors, as he's in one of my favourite films, Nashville, Ned Beatty. Widely acclaimed as a landmark picture, the film is noted for a music scene near the beginning, with one of the city men playing dueling banjos on guitar with a banjo-picking country boy, and as well for its notorious rape scene. And as they're talking here, Twiggy is in the back still putting all the balloons up, as Dave and Jim share a little off-key duet, Jim even twanging the stretched balloon in his mouth for effect.
We don't want Emma thinking we're the Beverly Hillbillies.
Oh, Deliverance, you mean?
Ding ding ding.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding ding ding.
Ding, ding,
Yeah, Mum.
Oh, turn up.
It's nice here to see Denise laughing at this and stroking Dave's shoulder playfully. Barb then returns with drinks and hands them out, asks Denise if she's had a nice day, and Dave says she spent most of it doing her hair. I mean, it is a party after all, she counters. And this whole episode is a great advert for Carling, I must say. I mean, the brand name fully visible all the times that the Royals and co are supping. I mean, obviously not a paid partnership or anything, as everything within the Royal universe is real, it has to be, but it's a good touch that adds to the sense of verisimilitude. So after handing out the drinks, it just never stops for Barb, you know, as she begins to pop up the banner declaring Anthony's 18th, climbing onto a chair and reaching across, and even when she's doing this too, she's asking after Darren's mother. I mean, how lovely is Barbara really? She's just on a whole level of her own.
Darren? Is your mum all right?
Yeah.
Oh, I heard she was in hospital.
Oh, yeah, she is, yeah.
Oh, you poor mum. What's up with her?
I'm not quite sure, really.
Oh, does he not know what it is then?
Don't know.
Give her my love, won't you?
Yeah.
And Christ, Darren, I mean, I love this bit, because Darren claims first that his mother's alright, despite Barb knowing she's in the hospital. Then he doesn't even know why she's in there. And regardless, however, Barb says, give her my best, won't you? Which you know he won't. You know Darren's not going to say to his mom, oh, Barbara asked how you were, she hopes you're okay. Darren's not going to say anything. So if everyone's seated, Barbara huffs and puffs, drops down from the chair and hauls it to the other side of Jim to pin up the other end. I mean, Darren or Dave could have maybe done this as a nice gesture, but Jim, of course, is stout, not moving, all criticism, asking if she's keeping it straight rather than offering to help. I mean, it's classic, really. And with Emma imminent, Jim is tried to be put into order somewhat. Put your shoes on, Barbara pleads, which is funny, really. I mean, this got me thinking, we never really see the characters' feet, do we? We never really see their lower half for the most part. It's always at waist level. They smell like Stilton, Denise says, though perhaps that soon-to-be-discovered smell on Dave's shoes is commingling to create a distinctly pungent odour. Denise's comment also reminds me of Dave's feet on the Cleethorpes Hotel that's mentioned before when Jim declared they needed a stake through them. Denise then pleads with Jim that when Emma arrives to shut the toilet door when he's having a wee, and as she pops back the fold-up chair in the corner after hanging the decorations, Barb adds not to pick your arse. Christ, the indignities are just piling up here. I like too that Jim's response, might as well sit in the bleeding shed, is met with lots of laughter by Darren. I mean, we've all been there, haven't we? Slightly awkward at a family gathering of people we might not know, but laughing a lot at the jokes of the dad or the older family members. The camera lingers long on Darren here as well, and we see him laugh, and then he just sort of shuts down, he quiets and sups his lager, the television continuing in front of him. You know, people are heard on it to greet each other, and then another greeting begins. The doorbell. It's Anthony and Emma.
Shut that door, Bob!
That'll be Anthony with Emma.
Denise and Dave look at each other excitedly. That'll be Anthony with Emma, Denise coos. Norma turns towards her and says it will. Everyone can't wait. Barbara heads to the door and, you know, I love on the front door of the Royals, they have that classic curtain in front of the window. That's just exactly what my nan used to have in Hemel Hempstead. Barbara grins towards the rabble behind her before opening the door, and in enters Anthony first, looking like a proper man now rather than the boy that we spent so much time with prior. Blonde hair, of course, and the family erupt into happy birthday. Twiggy standing up beside Jim with a lager and a bit of the buffet in his grip. Within the singing, we can hear Jim, of course, put his own spin on the lyrics, singing Happy Birthday Dear Gay Boy rather than Anthony.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Anthony.
Anthony listens, hands awkwardly in his pockets, gets a kiss from his mom, and then introduces for the first time in the show Emma. The camera cuts first to Dave and Denise, Dave gawking in that wide-eyed way that he does, and then the great Sheridan Smith, aka Emma, enters the living room. And she's very cute, isn't she? Barbara had before called her a tiny thing with a nose ring, which she doesn't seem to be sporting for this party, but she's made an effort, of course. She's a classic late 90s youth like Anthony, her hair in a tangle of intricate braids, a light dusting of makeup, rocking sportswear rather than party wear a la Denise and Norma, etc. And Sheridan Smith is just fantastic in this show. She plays it brilliantly in this episode. Awkward but attentive as Barb introduces everyone to her. And it really is awkward. Lots of hi-yas as Barb goes round, and Jim is quick to punctuate the slightly stilted mood here.
Oh, you don't know who everybody is, do you? That's Denise. She's Anthony's sister.
Yeah.
This is David, Anthony's sister's husband.
You're right.
Bloody hell, Barb, it's not This Is Your Life.
Oh, shut up, Jim.
I love how Barb calls Dave Anthony's sister's husband and not just Denise's husband. And Jim says it's not This Is Your Life, and This Is Your Life being a British biographical television documentary based on the 1952 American show of the same name. It was hosted by Eamon Andrews from 55 until 64, and then from 69 until his death in 1987. Michael Aspel then took up the role of host until the show ended in 2003, and it briefly returned in 2007 as a one-off special presented by Trevor McDonald. In the show, the host surprises a special guest before taking them through their life with the assistance of the Big Red Book. Both celebrities and non-celebrities have been featured on the show. The show was originally broadcast live, and over its run it has alternated between being broadcast on BBC and ITV. The surprise element was a very important part of the show, and if the guest heard about the project beforehand, it would be cancelled. And, go on the Wikipedia page of This Is Your Life, there's tons of interesting stories on there that I never know before. This one in particular I thought was intriguing concerning Ronnie Barker. Ronnie Barker was planned to be one of the show's subjects, and his wife, Joy Tubb, was helping the producers with the setup and pre-production. But Barker revealed in his autobiography that he had become extremely upset by his wife's obvious secrecy and even began to suspect she might be having an extramarital affair. Barker then confronted his wife and she had to explain to him about the programme, leading to its cancellation. Barker took the opportunity to impress upon his wife that he never wanted to be featured on the show, so future attempts to plan an addition around him were thwarted. And I like how Jim's introduced as Anthony's father. Emma gives a kind "Hello, Mr. Royle," and Jim smiles back winningly, thumbs up. It's sweet. And Sheridan Smith, let's just talk about her briefly. I mean, what a fantastic actress who just has a brilliant career as well. Sheridan Smith, OBE, I didn't realise she's an OBE, is an English actress, singer and presenter. Smith came to prominence after playing a variety of characters on sitcoms such as The Royle Family, 2 Pints of Lager and a Packet of Crisps, Gavin and Stacey and Benidorm. She played the role of Joey Ross on the drama series Jonathan Creek and went on to receive acclaim for starring in a succession of TV dramas such as Mrs. Big, Scylla, The C Word, Black Work and The Moorside. And I will say The Moorside, which is all about the effort to find Shannon Matthews. She is remarkable in that. It's a really good British drama if you've not seen it. The camera then pans out here slightly as Emma is introduced to Darren, who of course she knows before, says Daz. And something I never noticed here was that Emma has a circular tattoo, a kind of tribal tat, around her belly button, her midriff exposed. And I did check on Sheridan Smith's tattoos in real life. She does have quite a few, but that isn't one of them. So it's kind of fun that they added that in for the character. Norma is then introduced as Nana, who gives a kind hello love. And then there's Twiggy. And it's great how Twiggy comes with no title, it's just Twiggy. I mean, I guess you can deduce that he's a family mate, but yeah, Twig just stands there, nodding, supping from his lager, staring at her. And they're all staring at her, really. Dave and Denise in particular seem prone like cats before prey, entranced by this foreign object that Anthony has brought into the familial domain. Jim urges her to sit down and Denise gives her this look. I mean, you know the look I'm talking about. Really sizes her up from top to bottom, carrying her home with that natural, sultry duskiness in full effect. It's such a charged look. Not one with menace in particular, but one that suggests she's still trying to work her out. She's probably thinking, why is this very different type of girl here? A chair is found for Emma and she sits beside Anthony as Jim chucks him his wrap present, calling him Lurch as it flies through the air. Everyone excitedly watches. Denise perches of her chin on Dave's slightly oversized purple-shirted shoulder. Emma glances at them and then back at the case. Ant opens it and the clan then begins to state how well smart the ring is, which, of course, I mean, it's a £20 sovereign ring. Again, I'm not trying to shame or anything, but I just feel that's kind of how it's being written. It's almost a joke on Anthony, despite his present and the joy he takes from it, which is bittersweet, you know, and perfectly royal family. Norma beams happily, the newlyweds kind of gawp, Darren and Emma get excited around it, and from the back, Twiggy just watches on, loyally guarding the buffet. Ant pops on the one ring and shows it off. Barb is so happy, but I guess she's happy because Anthony's happy and, you know, overjoyed by it. Jim is shown smiling, not cracking wise, just taking it in. And Norma then inadvertently kicks off a bit of the fast show.
Wow. Oh, it does suit you, Anthony.
Oh, suits you, sir.
Oh, suits you, sir.
Oh.
Do you want it?
Oh, do you, sir?
Do you, sir? Do you want it?
Oh.
Do you?
Oh, 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 oh.
Of course he wants it. It's his birthday present.
So much to love about this moment. Firstly, the generation gap it displays. We've seen Dave and Jim engage in lots of impressions in the past of things, but not really Anthony. And, you know, this highlights the cultural differences. Nana's complete bemusement here too is great as well. I mean, of course he wants it. It's his birthday present, you know, as if she feels that Darren is mocking him slightly or something. And as well as that, it's funny to see Dave and Denise laughing to themselves at Nana's complete ignorance here. And there's another metatextual layer here that's delicious, as Dave and Denise, aka Craig and Caroline, are actually part of the Fast Show too. And the Fast Show, what's the Fast Show? Well, the Fast Show, known as Brilliant in the US, is a BBC comedy sketch show that ran from 94 to 97, with specials in 2000 to 2014. The show's central performers were Paul Whitehouse, Charlie Higson, Simon Day, Mark Williams, John Thompson, Arabella Weir, and Carolyn Ahern. Craig Cash was also a writer on the show. Loosely structured and reliant on character sketches, running gags, and many catchphrases, its fast-paced blackout style set it apart from traditional sketch series because of the number and relative brevity of its sketches. A typical half-hour TV sketch comedy of the period might have consisted of 9 or 10 major items with contrived situations and extended setups, whereas the premiere episode of The Fast Show featured 27 sketches in 30 minutes, with some items lasting less than 10 seconds and none running longer than 3 minutes. And what Anthony and Darren are referencing are Ken and Kenneth, who are two tailors in a men's formal wear shop who bombard potential customers with sexually explicit innuendo about their private life, frequently interjecting the catchphrase, "Oh, suit you, sir," much to the discomfort of the customers. And let's just talk about Caroline in the Fast Show, because, you know, she was one of the main players. Here's some of the characters that she used to play, including R. Janine Carr, a teenage mum with a unique world outlook, who refuses to reveal who the father of her baby is because it's not fair to grass on your head, master. She was also part of Roy and Renee, who are a northern couple with endless chattering from Renee and subdued nodding from her quiet, submissive husband Roy, whom she expects to agree meekly with everything she says. And Caroline also played Checkout Girl, a simple and chatty young woman working behind the till at a supermarket who passes comment on every item the customer buys regardless of the personal or sensitive nature of the product, such as KY jelly, bit of vaginal dryness. So yeah, we talk about the Fast Show a lot here, excuse me, but, you know, I find it interesting and it's my bloody podcast. So finally, this is just something that I saw online that I wasn't aware of. Johnny Depp and the Fast Show. In Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, Jack Sparrow quotes the show with the Rowley Birkin line, "And then they made me their chief." In a deleted scene in the movie, Sparrow also uses the Mark Williams catchphrase, "Oh, get me coat." So Johnny Depp is apparently a major fan of The Fast Show and an ardent admirer of Paul Whitehouse, who he once described as the greatest actor in the world. In 2000, Depp made a cameo appearance as the hapless customer in the Suits You Sir sketch in the Fast Show Farewell Special, and in 2000, Depp made a cameo on the show as the hapless customer in the Suits You Sir sketch in the Fast Show's Farewell Special, and in a 2015 interview he commented, "It was absolutely one of my proudest achievements, no question. It was one of my favourite things to have been on the last Fast Show." So with the focus on the Sovereign, we then get into another new character via Dave, who I don't think's ever mentioned again, Patrick, who owns Jazz Bows. Now, what the hell is Jazz Bows? I tried to Google around for this, like it could just be a made-up place. Like, is that a club or is it like a restaurant or something? You know, is it a jazz bar? Like, I don't think Dave would know anyone who owns a jazz bar. So, but he talks about this guy Patrick who has 3 of the Sovereign rings in a row in his finger, and Dave then points to his fingers to emphasise his point. It's kind of awkward, really. It gets no response. I mean, what can you say to that? But it kind of illustrates to Emma who Dave is, I suppose, from the off.
Hey, do you know Patrick who owns Jazz Bowls? He's got 3 of them sovereigns on his hand in a row there. See there? Looks top.
Anthony just continues to flex his finger with the ring on it, shows to Darren. Barb is seen appreciating it, and then she asks Emma if she wants a drink, but as she's driving, she won't. I mean, get her, we have heard that she's had a car before, but still, very impressive for someone of that age to have a car, And she just wants an orange, please, is what she asks for. Something Dave, Denise, and Jim all react to with surprise. I mean, not having a drink at a party? For shame, I guess. Vimto is offered, which I've always loved, but she's okay. And Anthony, his father's son, however, at this point, isn't helping Emma, isn't offering other drinks, isn't trying to make her comfortable. Rather, he's glued to the box, which is no doubt some dross like EastEnders or the like. I mean, he's really dead-eyed watching it too, transfixed. And Vimto, well, Vimto is a soft drink first sold in Lancashire in the United Kingdom. It was first manufactured as a health tonic in cordial form, and then decades later as a carbonated drink. And it contains the juice of grapes, raspberries and blackcurrants in a 3% concentration, flavoured with herbs and spices. Vimto has also been made into a sweet and an ice lolly. It's available in cans and bottles and as a draft soft drink in pubs. And recently I went to a Hungry Horse pub in Walsall, and they were offering steaks with Vimto glazes on them, which was just, barbaric, really. From the 1990s to 2003, Vimto print advertisements used the character Purple Ronnie, along with slightly rude poems by Giles Andre, the creator of Purple Ronnie. I mean, that's how I remember my Vimto. Purple Ronnie, quite similar to Bang on the Door, actually, in that kind of rudimentary stick figure nature. And this is interesting. In the Arabian Peninsula, Vimto has had over 80 years of dominance as the beverage of choice for the iftar or sunset feast during the Islamic holy fasting month of Ramadan. As of 2013, Ajun, the local bottler in Saudi Arabia, has been producing over 20 million bottles per year for the market. An article in the Sunday Times mentioned some 50 million bottles were sold during the one-month season in 2007. I mean, who knew Vimto was so big over there? So Barb, such a genial host. I mean, Emma said no a few times, but she's still looking for other things that she could get Emma. Offers a ham sandwich as an option, and Emma then drops a bomb.
Help yourself to the buffet. Can I get you a ham sandwich?
Oh, no, thank you. I'm a vegetarian.
Ooh.
A vegetarian. I mean, this would have been a bombshell regardless in the royal house, but to be fair, this was rarer back then. Not to say it wasn't a movement followed by millions in the 90s worldwide, but, I do recall myself as it being a bit of a oh my God, she's a vegetarian. Veganism wasn't even in the air back then, really, in popular culture. Dave and Denise are shocked. Emma glances at them a little embarrassed. Maybe it's kind of hard to read, She smiles at Barb, returns to the TV. I mean, poor Emma. She's really been put through the ringer a bit here. I mean, subtly, no doubt, but still, everyone watching her, asking her questions, surprised by her answers, And there's such a great choice here, too, directorially, where Norma gives a shocked, ooh, off screen, and it really kind of underscores the reverberating sense of surprise. Jim is seen muttering the words vegetarian in disbelief, He's a man who we know firsthand loves his thick chops and a bit of the old gammo. Twiggy ain't bothered in the back, gets on with the buffet, but Norma is now perched forward in a chair, arm leant across the handbag. And Dave, we see then, mutters vegetarian too to Anthony, who raises his eyebrows quickly. This is clearly a faux pas above faux pas, something the royals have never even considered. Anthony perhaps could have said this before, as he would have known, and they could have prepared somewhat, but obviously an 18-year-old, well, a 17-year-old pretty much at this point, he's not going to think like that, is he? Things then get desperate. No to the orange, no to the Vimto, no to the ham sandwich. So Barbara then asks if Emma wants something that Denise cooks Dave for dinner, Dairy Lee, which is then shot down again, and Barb looks a little deflated. Barb, who doesn't listen to the fact that she doesn't want anything, asks Denise if she can have the cheese, not registering that she might not be hungry. Norma, who gave a full-throated ooh upon hearing she's a veggie, needs it confirmed from Denise and then utters another one.
What is she?
She's a vegetarian, Nana.
Oh, you could have a bit of cheese, though. Have you got some cheese, Barbara? Oh, Emma, it's a shame for you.
And at this point, too, we get a great shot of Norma, her brooch and her pearls. Nana then gets involved, and I mean, this whole sequence is just, it's classic, isn't it? It's incredible. What an entrance for Emma. What a first experience with this lot. Cheese is offered by Norma, who then claims it's such a shame for her. I mean, she means this well, but it's pretty offensive to say to someone you've just met, it's a shame for you, your life choice that is far more ethical than any of us sitting near you. I like the shot here of Emma, who frowns slightly at that and bites her tongue. She probably wants Ant to stick up for her somewhat, who does eventually after Jim steps in. Jim, who says she's all right, and Jim, who is way friendlier and more hospitable than the people who were just asking him to stop picking his arse. Jim then attempts to steer the convo towards her new car and asks what her dad drives. Norma, though, I mean, we all know what she's like. She's like Jim with a chopped bone. She just won't let it go.
Could you have some wafer-thin ham? Could she have wafer-thin ham, Barbara?
No.
Oh.
This is one of my personal all-time favourite Royle Family moments. Not just the hilariously annoying insistence of Norma here, but her skewed logic. I mean, meat is meat is murder, but apparently if it's sliced thin, then she could have it. I mean, it's still from a dead animal, but ridiculous and brilliant. Nana doesn't stop though, does she? With Dave and Denise watching as ever, Denise perched on Dave's shoulder, both of them smiling as Nana proclaims that they've heard nothing from Anthony but Emma, 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 which, I mean, must be bollocks, right? Like, I can't imagine that Anthony would bring it up to any of the Royle family members, let alone Nana. Emma smiles at Anthony, but he's still staring forward, wishing this all wasn't happening. And then Nana says it's the first time she's known Anthony courting. And courting? What a term. Like that joiner courted Betty, no doubt. Well, clouted her as well. Denise calls Nana out a bit for saying that, then returns her gaze right back to Emma. She's like zeroed in on her. Nana then continues the onslaught, asks Emma further embarrassing questions. Anthony probably anticipated that it was Jim who was going to say something, but no, it's actually old Norma. Is your Nana still alive, she asks. Though I imagine she has two Nanas like most people, you know. But she is, we learn from Emma, she doesn't live with her. And Emma seems to look up at Barbara briefly at this point, though the camera isn't on Barbara's face. You can just sort of see Barbara standing behind her. It doesn't quite show us quite what's happening there. Maybe she's just looking for reassurance. She's like, is your mom going to just keep talking to me in front of everyone, you know? And Nana, I mean, she just won't stop. She's pulling forward in her seat from the sofa cushion with some effort. Relays her cataract operation, Jim shaking his head. Darren is somewhat cocooned off from this conversation with Anthony and Emma between him. He's just there with his lager and the box.
I've had my cataracts done, and if you'd have come here 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have been able to see you.
Which is odd, and again, just plain wrong, really. As we saw Norma, and she could see perfectly fine. I mean, with one eye, but she could see perfectly fine. And the way Emma says why is great.
Why?
Like, I love the way Sheridan Smith delivers it. It's genuinely curious, and it's something she'll soon regret, as Nana's going to run a mile with this inch. Like when Twiggy chose to sat next to her in the Sunday afternoon episode. I mean, notice how he's as far off as possible from Norma here. Nana, yet again, is just making everything about herself. It's Anthony's birthday after all, but of course, let's not focus on him and his day. Let's have Nana take centre stage.
It's a very serious operation, but I don't say anything. But I was very well looked after here. I didn't want to go home.
Again, even after she's left, you know, after the week of the operation, she's still trying to claw back in. And after all this Nana disruption, Jim tries to get things back on track and resumes his line of questioning on what her dad's motor is. And, you know, here we get a bit of an insight into Emma's wealthy background. He has a BMW. Anthony thought he had a four-wheel drive, but that's actually her mum's. And that's a really nice, subtle way of building the background without saying too much. Something that the Royle family is just so adept at doing. The family then turn on a coin to Jim after they hear about the car, who rubs his fingers together, whispering that they got two cars. Emma seems uncomfortable here, and rightly so, you know, this is just a bit... They're just treating her like an object here, aren't they? She huffs a little to herself here, and then resumes watching the TV. I mean, it's just been a non-stop line of interrogation. Barbara pops off then for a drink, and Dave asks if Emma knew that Denise was pregnant. She didn't. I mean, surprise, surprise, Anthony didn't let her know. We're having a baby, Dave helpfully explains too, after saying that Denise is pregnant. Denise takes the congratulations from Emma and then instantly pivots from Dave's shoulder to yelling back to the drinks cabinet to her mom that Anthony didn't tell Emma. And all Barbara can say is, ah. And what a shock this must be for Emma too. To see Anthony's much older sister, you know, she's a proper adult, Denise, she's not like Anthony's younger sister, to see Anthony's much older sister behaving like such a petty child. And not just that, but Norma's along for the guilt trip too. He didn't tell her about my cataracts either, as if that was going to be in the family bulletin. Jim can't help but cringe at all this, and the camera cuts to him, gripping the sides of his chair. And perhaps trying to get a grip on the situation, or perhaps not knowing what to do next, Barbara castigates Anthony, says to get Emma a wagon wheel, whether she wants one or not. And he climbs over the sofa and putting his trainers onto the arm. Denise then says she can smell something. Barbara sniffs and says it smells like dog muck, and almost as a Pavlovian response, Norma utters, "Muck for luck," in an annoying way. I mean, very classic for a granny to say that. Apparently it's a 17th century phrase, but, you know, we all know what it means.
You get it?
Oh, that smells like dog muck.
Muck for luck.
The wagon wheel is handed to Emma on a paper plate, and it's kind of reminiscent of a curled dog turd in a way. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but again, this is the Royle Ramble. It's kind of what we do over here. And then begins the undignified checking of shoes, and Dave is revealed as the culprit. I think it's me, Dave says. You think? And of course, to maximise the offence for Emma, it has to be the person sitting right beside her who has stepped in the dog shit. Dave keeps the sole of his shoe up aloft across his leg, pointed right at the young couple. And Denise isn't happy.
I'm sorry, Emma.
You're all right.
Oh, Dave! Take it off, you big clown. Oh, I'm so sorry, Emma.
Denise is so aggrieved. The cartoonish way she pops a finger under her nose is great, and Emma herself copies her with putting a bag under her nostrils. Dave says to leave it to dry as it will be easier to get off, but Denise is having none of that and urges Barbara to grab Dave's shoe off him. Barbara gets up and approaches Dave, and in the background we can see Twiggy just sitting down. Twiggy, who has barely said a word for many minutes, she's just kind of taking it all in, I guess. Sorry, Emma, Anthony says as the boot is taken off. And Barb has to actually untie Dave's laces to get it off too, and again the shoe is brought slightly nearer to her. What a palaver, what an incident. Not Dave's fault really, of course. It happens to everyone, unfortunately. You know, I remember being a young kid, like when my sister was born, and my dad picked me and my brother up from primary school. And of course, I trod in dog shit and brought it in the car as we're going to the hospital. Like, it does happen. And again, the Royle family touches on so many familiar things that you don't really see on TV. Like, everyone has stepped in dog shit. It's a bit of a nightmare, you know, it's so annoying to do, muck for luck or not. But I can't think of many, like, shows that have depicted that, but it's just dealt with so brilliantly here. And as soon as the shoe leaves Dave's foot, Nana is back on it.
Is your Nana still alive, Gary?
Nana, it's Darren.
Yeah?
Does she live with you, Darren?
No.
Maybe she calls Darren Gary here because she was thinking of Gary from The Butchers, you know, him that stinks of mince, him the one that Denise and Cheryl kind of want to shag, or just because it sounds a bit like Darren Gary and she forgot. I mean, she's not subtle, is she, Nana? Asking all the young people in the house if their nanas live with them, but it's endearing in a slight way, you know. Nana parping up again seems to strike something in Jim, and he gets up, and to be fair, he's been great so far. Asking questions, focusing on Emma, but then he ruptures it somewhat. I mean, he could never not be Jim for long, of course, proclaiming that he has a turtle's head in his underpants. Darren bursts into laughter, but Anthony and Emma are stoic. Dave smiles, but Denise just admonishes her father, you know, who seems to glower in her direction as he leaves. We then cut to the kitchen. Barbara, undignified with a butter knife, attempting to clean out the crusted crenellations of Dave's shoe. I wonder what they use for the dog dirt here. We see a bit of it slopping out unceremoniously into the sink with a plop. And behind Barbara, we can see a packet of Twiglets too on the side. And behind Barb, outside the kitchen, Mary can be heard cooing. And then she enters with a made-up Cheryl and Joe, who seems a little different.
Only us. Hi, Mary. Hi, Joe. You look nice. Hi, Joe.
Hello, Barbara.
So Mary watches them leave and seems excited to talk to Barb. Is Emma here, she asks. And Barbara, full of pride, responds that she's lovely, her left hand still deep into Dave's boot and a knife held in the other. She is a vegetarian though, she adds with a whisper. And Mary funnily says, oh well, it happens to a lot of them. I mean, man, these guys, they really can't deal with the non-meat eaters, can they? Barb then turns the shoe to Mary, and this is just hysterical to me. The unflappable Mary. Rather than just seeing it for what it is, I mean, what else would Barbara be trying to clean off a shoe above a sink? Godly Mary, untouchable Mary. I mean, where Emma and Denise had turned their noses up, she puts hers even closer. She sniffs in deep to the sole of the shoe, surmising from that it's dog dirt. A great term too, dog dirt. Barb then talks about her day, how hard it's been, what with Jim being miserable and now this, but Mary's one for positivity, of course, saying it's a good job that they can laugh at it. Mary then says that she thinks Joe is a bit drunk. He was at a bowling club do, which Barbara conspiratorially laughs at. You know, she seems to know what goes on at these things, I suppose. Mary then says that they've kindly put a tenner in the card, talks about how they've all grown up, like their Cheryl too, who, I guess Cheryl's grown up in more ways than one, who, you know, she's probably around Denise's age, Cheryl. I always thought she was maybe a year or two younger than Denise, but it's possible they might be on the same one. But I mean, the inference being that they're both kind of adults now, you know, and not children. Barbara then asks Mary a favour, asks her to have a sniff around, and she says, I'm a great one for smelling anything, which is wild. I mean, Mary's the best, isn't she? It just adds to her slightly manic nature. I mean, who says that they're a great one for smelling anything, you know? And as ever with Royle Ramble, you know, I'm looking in the background, and it's nice here that between Mary and Barbara, we can see lots of sliced bread behind them, ready to be made into sarnies, I'm sure, soon enough. And the camera then lingers for a second. Mary doesn't leave in the kitchen, she rather just watches Barbara at work as she pours cold water on Dave's mess and begins to scrub again. I mean, any other show would have just gone back into the lounge by now, but as we've established time and time again on this podcast, this isn't any other show. We're then back to the buffet, yeah, I'm going to call it that. Twiggy's drinking a Tennent's, he says the pies are great. We then see Anthony open his gift from Cheryl, which is a CD. Now, the script says it's a stereophonic CD, although you can't really make that out. It's not very clear. Anthony always doesn't reference it, and he doesn't really linger on the artwork, but the script says it's a stereophonic CD, so I'll assume it's one. Anne seems really happy with it, which is quite nice, and Twiggy is quick to say to Cheryl that he can get anything like that. Now you tell me, she says, slightly playfully, and I wonder if they shacked up at the wedding, if this is a little bit more flirting, you know, I mean, we do eventually hear that Twiggy and Cheryl do get together for sure, but, you know, these are the kind of earlier moments of their relationship, I suppose, or at least their liaisons.
Cheers, Cheryl.
Oh, that's good.
Hey, where'd you get that, Cheryl? If I can get you anything like that, you know.
Now tell me.
Which I like to think is from Barbara's bakery. It's a pitch, basically, a football pitch with a little kind of edible football in the middle. It's cute. So just quickly on Tennent's, which is what Twiggy is supping. Tennent's Lager is Scotland's best-selling pale lager with approximately 60% of the Scottish lager market. The lager was once famous for the designs of its cans, which featured photos of various female models printed onto the side, known affectionately as the Lager Lovelies. This feature was used by Tennent's up until the final campaign in 1989, and today, authentic original Lager Lovely cans are sought after among collectors. The can design is now a plain yellow colour with the company's trademark large red T featuring prominently. A banner heads the can reading, Scotland's favourite beer, only ever brewed at Well Park Brewery, Glasgow. And those Lager Lovely cans, by the way, I did seek them out. They're so gauche. Like, they're stuff like, you know, if anyone's familiar with the Bada Bing in Sopranos, it's kind of that calibre of stuff that you see pinned up on the walls there. There's nothing lovely about those. And stereophonics, I mean, again, it's not confirmed in the episode, but the script says it, so we'll do a little bit of context here. Described as classic UK rock, delivered with whiskey vocals, the band have been summarised as possessing a sound akin to the genres of alternative rock and British traditional rock. Of course, they're a Welsh band. Their debut album, Word Gets Around, was released in August 97 and charted at number 6 in the UK, aided by the singles Local Boy in the Photograph, More Life in a Tramp's Vest and 1,000 Trees. The band have achieved a total of 10 top 10 singles, as well as a number 1, Dakota. And having sold around 10 million copies worldwide, Stereophonics are one of the most successful Welsh rock acts in history. And probably something that most people know about Stereophonics is that Wayne Rooney's a giant fan of theirs, and he actually has a tattoo of the title of one of their albums on his arm, which is fittingly just enough education to perform. Twiggy then asks Dave, as he's piling his plate, if he's got enough there, which is slightly rich, as Twiggy has seemingly been dining at the back of the table for most of the episode. Denise has done him no tea again, he says, so that's why Dave is stocking up. The camera then pans to Joe, who's sitting at the side of the table, who enthusiastically taps Darren on the arm. I love that this establishes them as being familiar with each other. No doubt they've been at similar occasions like this, perhaps. And the normally mute Joe is eager to tell Darren about what happened at the bowls club.
Hey, Darren, I want to tell you something. I saw Bob Carter. I hadn't seen him for 15 years, and I saw him today. He grew up on our street, and then he moved. Berryway, I think it was. I hadn't seen him for 15 years, and bugger me, he tends to put the ball in for him. Very good show.
Bob Carter, there's another name. 15 years gone by, and Joe was clearly very happy to see him out the blue. I suppose this was a pre-Facebook, heck, pre-Friends Reunited era, and Joe certainly wouldn't have been on the internet anyway, so it would have been a nice surprise, I guess. And Bury's mentioned there as well. You know, we like to chart the local geography of Manchester. Bury being a large market town in Greater Manchester on the River Irwell. And there's many famous people from Bury, actually. I mean, Sir Robert Peel, the 19th century Prime Minister, who was perhaps best known for his introduction of the modern police force. Gary Neville, Phil Neville, Tracy Neville as well, their younger sister. We also have Helen Flanagan, who's been on Coronation Street, and Guy Garvey from Elbow, who are a wonderful band. And his lyrics are very much in that royal family lineage, you know, that kind of intimate, detail-orientated lyricism. And getting back to Joe and Darren, I mean, Darren, of course, doesn't give a fuck about what Joe says. Very good, Joe, he says, and then takes his plate back to his seat. Barbara brings the clean shoes back to Dave, who gratefully accepts them, but her work, of course, is never done. Then asking Nana if she wants something to eat. She asks for something to drink first, Nana, and then asks for just a bit to eat. Not a lot, something cheesy. And it's very classic there. I mean, how many buffets have you been to where the mother will often go up for the older relatives and get a plate for them, even though it's just a step away? She is somewhat frail at this point, Nana, so I understand that. And we then go back to the table and see a new combo who I don't think we've ever seen on screen interacting. Twiggy and Mary. Mary's asking him if he feels that Joe has had too much. Has he, El? He says. Though I imagine drunk to Mary is probably sober to Twiggy. Mary then hands over the card to Anthony, and we get to see a new corner of the back area of the lounge. This is the back left corner. And on the shelf is a speaker that no doubt is never plugged in, and lots of odd trinkets of pots and ewers. Mary then goes to Emma, and behind Mary and Emma we can see Anthony opening the card, classic football design of course, and he smiles as he pockets the tenner. I mean, Mary's so kind, so warm. I love how she introduces herself and her family to Emma, and of course, it's within biblical terms.
And this must be Emma.
Hiya.
So many new names for you. Just remember, we're Mary and Joseph, like in the Bible. For we've got Cheryl, not Jesus.
Hiya.
But we've got Cheryl, not Jesus. And Cheryl, as if on cue, says hiya as she passes, but doesn't even look at Emma. Just reaches past her to pile more on her already heavy plate. I mean, it's a sight to behold, that lot of hers. Tons of sandwiches against cocktail sausages and rolls. And besides Cheryl, her drunken father is chatting to Barbara now and playing with a sandwich. Talking about someone who had his leg taken off in the 60s, but it never bothered him. Barb is a little less dismissive than Darren, but still quick to move on. It's interesting too, in the corner of the room we can see a few LP records stacked and leaning against a wall. It's hard to make out what they are, however. And you can also see behind Joe some Vimto on the table, which Barbara had obviously offered earlier. And how wild to hear Joe in this way. I mean, they've done the taciturn thing now with Joe. He's a quiet man. They've done loads of jokes on that. They turned it on its head slightly in the wedding episode when he compliments Denise, and that's a great moment. But here it's a complete 180. And Joe is now threatening Norma for the most annoying person in the room to talk to. Barbara then brings over the plate of food to Norma, and Joe can be heard talking about a drink or something. It's kind of hard to make out. And then, down from his turtle heading, Jim has the banjo in hand and strums triumphantly as he enters. Everyone's smiling and cheering.
Greg, I bought all the drink at the club.
And there's a great shot of Joe, Cheryl, Emma, Mary, Anthony and Twiggy all around the buffet table at the back and happy to hear it. Emma also shoots Anthony a smile. And this is all no doubt very new to her. They definitely don't track Dogda into her house, and Roger certainly doesn't whip out his banjo to inspire everyone. But of course, not everyone is happy. Norma can be heard to say, "You made me jump," and we can only hear her like with a "ooh," he doesn't show her on screen. And it is kind of startling, but she probably had something cheesy in her gob as he entered with his instrument. Barbara calls for a toast. Everyone gets into position. Twiggy brings over a bottle of bubbly to the youngsters in the corner and pours it out. Dave urges Jim to turn the TV volume down. Not to turn it off, of course, just to keep it lower. And Jim begins by mocking Anthony, saying they were lucky to get a few hours off work, but of course he isn't working. He's not a bad lad really, though, he says, as Mary steps between them and sits alongside Norma. And it's noticeable too here now that Joe is at the back of the room rather than Twiggy. Anthony is then urged to make a speech, including by Darren even. Everyone's perched forward, eager to hear what he's going to say. "I don't know what to say, really," he says, and there's just a friendly silence that greets him. Nana kind of says, "Oh, God," and laughs to herself at the awkwardness. It's real subtle, and, I wonder if Liz Smith just kind of put that in there. I'm not saying it's this amazing moment or anything, but just, again, very believable. So seizing the captive audience, Jim then makes a toast to Emma for putting aside all our doubts about Anthony being a sausage jockey. Something that not only Darren explodes at, but Emma too, laughing hard, her defences broken down somewhat. Dave is laughing as well, but Mary and Norma don't seem best pleased with that comment, and, understandably so, I suppose, for their temperaments and their age. Everyone then says happy birthday, going quickly into he's a jolly good fellow. Jim tries to play along to that melody of his banjo, but doesn't really get anything going. Another speech is then urged, and he says he's already said that he's not got anything to say. "You gotta say something," Dave proclaims, and then Anthony gets into a deeply moving soliloquy.
I told you I ain't got no what to say.
He's right,
You gotta say something.
Well, alright, I'd just like to say, thanks to everyone for coming. Thanks.
Oh, it's lovely.
Did you welcome to that speech, Darren?
No.
Nana again can be heard there. Oh, ain't he lovely? And Jim's dig is funny when he mentions Darren. Darren who doesn't quite get it at first and then laughs along enjoyably. And I think at this point, this is the most characters we've seen on screen at the same time, all interacting with each other at least. So we've got Anthony, Darren, Emma in one cluster, then nearby Dave, Denise, Mary, Norma, Barb and Cheryl all around the main sofa, with Jim in his chair and Twiggy and Joe behind him. So that's 12 total, and credit to the show, every single one of them is brilliantly written and fantastically acted. I mean, the cast in the Royle Family is just second to none, isn't it? Now, you guys know I go gaga whenever we get into Royle Family history, and Mary begins to tell a story here about when Anthony was a little boy and he wanted 10p from her. I mean, how cute. And how he used to do the birdie song for her and Joe. Jim then strums along to this one successfully, and Norma even seems to cluck her arms, looking at Jim as well, smiling. And behind them all we can see Twiggy, who has now grabbed a bottle of the bubbly he shared out earlier and he's just swigging it all to himself.
Do you remember, Anthony, when you were a little boy and used to come in wanting 10p from me? And then you used to do the birdie song for me and
And the birdie song, well, the birdie song, also known as the chicken dance or the bird dance or the bird song, is an song, and its associated fad dance is now a contemporary dance throughout the Western world. The song was composed by accordion player Werner Thomas from Davos, Switzerland in the 1950s. Post-birdie song ditty, Jim then kicks into a whole number, and, wow, what a presence Jim has. He probably could have been an amateur musician, he probably could have done quite well down the Labour Club and stuff like that. He sounds great, the banjo rings out cleanly with a real pluck and charm, he skits and scats between the verses, and as Jim plays, the camera pans across, and everyone's having such a good time.
Now in the family we have an heirloom, handed down to me some years ago. Scoodly-doo, diddly-doo, it's been in our possession since Grandad was a lad. And I'll tell you what it is and then you'll know.
Mary's tapping her knee, Cheryl's bobbing, Dave's smiling. No one in the room is embarrassed by this, quite the opposite. Anthony's slapping both of his legs enthusiastically, his sovereign visible as beside Darren adds percussion. The camera then goes back across everyone, and we can see Denise looking at Emma and smiling to her, which is sweet. And the song itself is called Grandad's Flannelette Shirt by George Formby. And this is right in Jim's wheelhouse, Think of Series 1's Another Woman, when Dave and Denise come back drunk and Jim sings I Want a Girl, just like the girl that married dear old dad. A song that will come back in the show in definitely one of the greatest scenes. So the song he's singing is by George Formby, who I must say is someone that by virtue of doing this podcast and listening to Ricky's banjo music, I'm really getting into. I actually really, really like George Formby. And I always knew that he was one of George Harrison's favourites, and I'm a complete Beatles nut, so it's kind of another avenue to go down. But George Formby, OBE, born George Hoy Booth, who lived from 1904 to 1961, was an English actor, singer-songwriter and comedian who became known to a worldwide audience for his films of the 30s and the 40s. On stage, screen and record, he sang light comical songs, usually playing the ukulele or banjolele, and became the UK's highest paid entertainer. Formby's biographer, Geoffrey Richards, considers that the actor, quote, had been able to embody simultaneously Lancashire, the working classes, the people and the nation. Formby was considered Britain's first properly homegrown screen comedian. He was an influence on future comedians, particularly Charlie Drake and Norman Wisdom, and culturally on entertainers such as the Beatles, who referred to him in their music. Since his death, Formby is the subject of 5 biographies, 2 TV specials and 2 works of public sculpture. So Jim finishes his Formby number, and it seems like another one's about to begin when Joe then begins to sing. I mean, oh my god, this episode is astonishing. There's so many good moments. So Joe from the back of the room then begins to croon. Jim shushes everyone, and yeah, I mean, this whole sequence to me is perfection, just sublime.
Again, Kathleen, across the ocean wild and wide.
Nana also gets people to be quiet, proclaiming that she loves this, popping her glass down and then cringing just slightly at the noise she made because she wants it to be as perfect as possible for Joe's rendition. And Joe, Peter Martin, the actor, he has a really nice voice, it must be said, and who would have thought that considering his normally silent demeanour? The camera then moves past Jim, who is comping Joe and providing a little backing. I love that. He's kind of improvising with Joe slightly and putting some chords underneath the melody. And Twiggy, we can see across the table from Joe, is smiling as he's listening. I wonder if Joe had done this before. You know, maybe they knew that he could sing. Obviously, it's a surprise to us as viewers, but maybe they were aware that, you know, when Joe has a bit to drink, he likes to get into this mode. The camera then gets closer and closer to Joe, his eyes closed and focus on the song. People then start to sing along as Jim plucks a few chords. We can hear Mary in the mix, Norma too. Twiggy, however, has just lit a cig and stares out mournfully in the distance, maybe thinking about little Lee's visitation rights. And the song itself that Joe's singing is I'll Take You Home Again, Kathleen, which is a popular song written by Thomas Paine Westendorf in 1875. And in spite of its German-American origins, it is widely mistaken to be an Irish ballad. There are many, many versions of this song. I mean, the Wikipedia page is awesome because it lists them all, including one by Michael Crawford, who Norma would mention a few episodes ago for his album In Concert in 1998. And funnily enough, in the Wikipedia article, they also mention the Royle Family. At the bottom it says, in the second series episode, Anthony's Birthday, of the British TV series The Royle Family, the family's neighbour, Joe Carroll, played by Peter Martin, normally very quiet and retiring, gives a well-received rendition of the song. And it is well received. I mean, it's very moving. And I wonder how they decided to end this way. I mean, obviously Joe had to be able to sing. Like, if he had a bad voice, it wouldn't... They could do that for comic effect, maybe. But this, you know, kind of... The fact that the episode ends in such a stinging way kind of needs this beforehand, needs this sweetness. You know, maybe they were aware that he could sing, like they were aware that Ricky could play the banjo, and just kind of wrote it into the script. The camera, focused on Joe, then turns around him, and we can see his view of everyone sitting together, most looking directly at him, other than his daughter, who is digging further into a massed plate. I mean, I bet she's heard her dad sing a bunch. She's kind of over it. It then cuts back to Norma and the rest. Norma seemingly ready to cheer as the verse ends, but Joe then goes into another verse, and Norma seems emotional. Mary smiles as she watches. Dave and Denise are letting it play and enjoying themselves too. Emma is a little perplexed, but smiles when Anthony looks at her. Darren, though, I mean, Darren's having none of it. Arms folded, brow furrowed, looking at the muted TV, no doubt. I mean, he was down for the upbeat skiffle number just earlier, but clearly this is not his particular brand of entertainment. Although we have heard that Darren's on bass in Exit, or was in Exit, so he's a musician. Maybe he should appreciate it, I don't know. We then cut back to Joe, who is more animated, twisting his glass as he sings. And there's something weird here too that I just noticed as I was watching this for the show. Over my Joe's left elbow, I mean, get out your DVDs or whatever and check this for me, but check this out. There's like a demonic looking dog statue that I don't think we ever see again. It's tucked away slightly out of sight, but it's really like demented looking. Anyway, Joe continues to sing, everyone joins in for another verse, and there's just an amazing side-by-side here. There's Cheryl on the right, eating more and more, and Norma, who is in tears now, really upset. Barbara's comforting her. She's saying, your dad used to sing this. I mean, oh God, I mean, she's got such tears in her voice, Norma. So cool to hear that Mr. Speakman sang as well. Again, the parallels between Jim are quite interesting. And Dave and Denise beside are holding hands. Denise mouths to Anthony that Nana's crying. Emma checks on her too, looks at Nana and bites a lip. And there's Darren, of course, as well at the end, who is positively seething now. We then cut back to Joe again, the buffet beside him, and another final swoop is taken. Jim is building on the earlier chords now and arpeggioing off. Twiggy downs more of the bottle. Norma is just weeping in Barbara's arms, Barbara resting her head on hers. The song really has had an effect here. Jim plucks out the final chord, and Joe's voice crescendos. And then the song just sits for a second. I mean, this tableau, this shot, this Hogarthian expanse of characters is just... I mean, the Royle Family, its emotional range is just astounding to me, really. I mean, just a second ago, we're listening to them skiffle, everyone was getting rowdy, and now everyone's quiet, everyone's just enraptured by this moment. And then the song just sits for a second. No one does anything. No applause, no cheer, no, oh, that were lovely. And then we get to the end of the episode, which, as I'm sure you already know, it's one of the most memorable Royle Family moments, one of the most memorable endings. I mean, this show's so good at ending episodes. It falls to Darren, who, still arms folded, turns to the whole room. He doesn't say it from his chair. He actually leans forward like Norma was leaning forward to talk to Emma. He's looking at everyone and he says it.
And when the fields are fresh and green, I'll take you to your home again.
I can still smell shit in here.
Oh, man. We only get a second of reaction from his comment. Ant and Emma, holding hands, turn to him. We can see a bit of Dave too, with his gawking wide eyes looking. And I mean, what a thing to say at that moment. Norma's distraught. Joe just opened his heart out. Cheryl's stuffing her face. Why does Darren need to say that then? I mean, he's a guest in the household. Okay, the music isn't to his taste, but did he really need to say that right there and then? It's amazing. It's shocking. It's truly hilarious. I mean, this episode could have gone 100 ways, but no one would have anticipated that. You know, why did Darren have to be so dour there? It's magnificent. And what happens after? Would anyone have called him out for that? Would anyone have said he was rude? Would people have just sort of awkwardly laughed and then another song began? Like, we don't know. The world continues without us. This world that feels so real, it just keeps going as that chord rings out and that faint whiff of dog shit is in the air. I mean, I got to applaud that ending. Every time I see it, it really makes me laugh. It's so bold and so brash and so inventive, and it makes Anthony's 18th something no one there will ever forget. And yeah, that wraps it up, guys. So again, if you enjoy the show, you want to give back to the show, there's many ways you can do that. You can email us, theroyalramblepod@gmail.com. You can follow us on the Twitter or on iTunes. Please leave a review if you enjoy the show. Don't if you don't. Patreon is the big one there. So if you really, really love the Royle Ramble and you love the Royle family and you want to hear the next episode right now, if you love that episode and you do not want to wait the whole 28 days until you hear my thoughts on the Xmas special, then go over to the Patreon. Support us over there and you get a direct link where you can just listen to it on the desktop or on your player or anything like that. So yeah, this is Tom. As always, appreciate you guys listening to me ramble on about the Royals. I'll see you next month and yeah, take it easy. Tom Quee presents The Royle Ramble, an episode-by-episode celebration of the classic British sitcom The Royle Family. To get in touch with the show, email us at theroyalramblepod@gmail.com.